How have I been doing this for 2 years already? Hey everyone, my name is Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here today. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a look back at sort of the channel in general over the last couple of years, but also specifically at the round of TBR MASH that I completed last March for April, that's when it was. It was the 12th round of TBR MASH, which is my TBR game, which is inspired by the childhood game of MASH. It was the 12th round of it. It was a year of me having this channel, and I asked some friends to pick some books for me to read. And basically today I'm going to go through the books that they picked, sort of who was the most successful, who was maybe the least successful. Now I'm talking about this, I really wish I had done a spreadsheet before I started filming this, but you know, we're going to see how those picks went. I will have already put up a video which is a new round of TBR MASH, which is the 24th round, so it's our 2-year anniversary of it. And for that round, once again, I've asked friends to pick me some books that they want me to read. The people who were most successful last year, I've asked to pick me extra books. There are some people returning from last year, there's some new people involved as well. It was a fun time, so if you want to go and watch that one, I will link it somewhere, either down below or up here somewhere. But that one should have gone up like a week before this video did, so you do have that one to go and watch. But yeah, let's just talk about what it's been like for the last 2 years. So like I said, how has it even been 2 years at all, really? Like, that just blows my mind a little bit. I started uploading videos on this channel and I wasn't entirely sure I was actually going to be consistent with it, or if I'd even have enough ideas to kind of carry on with it, because like it's still a struggle sometimes. Like, I now actually have a list of all my videos planned for the next like month and a half, but sometimes like that just does not happen. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I've got all these ideas of things I want to do, and sometimes I'm just like, I need a video to go up today and I have no idea where to even start. So the fact that I've actually managed to consistently upload, and like pretty much consistently, like there's been a couple of times where I missed a video or two, but generally it's been pretty much consistent since March 2021. So I'm very impressed with myself for that. In terms of sort of like growth of the channel, I am hovering at around about 800 subscribers at the minute. It keeps going like just above and just under over the last like couple of weeks. But I am again just like really shocked that I've even managed to get to that number, because like I honestly thought I would put these videos and no one would watch them. So it's nice that you guys are all here and seem to be enjoying that. It's nice that I've been able to make friends through this channel. Like the fact that I had a bunch of friends that I could go to and ask them for book recommendations and not even like not even really have to like worry about it, because I knew they were all going to be there, because they're like my closest friends who I speak to every day. As this is going up, I'm pretty sure I should be spending the weekend with a load of them. So just like good things have come out of this channel in general. Over the last year, I've definitely sort of shifted the content of this channel a little bit. So it's gone away from being just about books and being more about theatre as well, because I've always kind of talked about theatre in passing on the channel, like in vlogs and things like that, but then obviously as things opened up more and more over the last like couple of years, it's become more and more of a thing in my vlogs, and I decided to make that more of a thing in my sit-down videos as well. I'm actually getting ready to film my theatre wrap-up for this month as well while I'm sat here, so I'm having like a filming day, and that's one of the things I'm doing. And I think that's part of what's made me like keep up with this channel as well, where I've been like struggling for ideas. One of the things that I've really loved is being able to bring that side of what I'm interested in into this channel a little bit more as well, and making it just be like a sort of more general picture of things that I enjoy. I know I've spoken about this a lot before, so I'm not going to ramble about it now, but yeah, basically happy 2-year anniversary for the channel. I'm very happy that people are still here and still watching, and yeah, more and more things to come. I have quite a few ideas for things coming up, so hopefully they all come to fruition, but we will see. As you can probably tell, I'm not really great at like talking about like myself and like reflecting on things, so I'm going to move quickly past that section and I'm going to go on to talking about the books that my friends recommended me last year. So let me load up TBR MASH from last year and we can go through what books people picked and sort of how successful they were. So last year's group of people that picked me books was a little bit of a mixture. It was people that I was like quite close to, that I was talking to quite a lot. I also did just put out like a tweet on Twitter and said like, is anybody willing to help me with my TBR? And some people replied to that. So some people I knew sort of like a little bit better than others, which may come into play a little bit in like sort of what the picks are and how successful we were, but I will get to that later. This year, I think because there were more people that I was quite close to, I was like able to like actively ask people that I speak to on a regular basis to pick me books that I trust their choices, because I did want to give myself a little bit more control this year. But last year was was quite a nice variety of people, and it did leave me a little bit more daunted, which possibly was a good thing because you know, adding that little bit of suspense into like what was actually going to come up on my TBR each month. I have loaded up the video, so I'm just going to talk through in order. The first person that came up is Meg, who is one of the people that I am closest to, so I did have quite a lot of faith in her picks. We don't always agree on like every single book, but generally she knows what I like, so I feel like I can trust her recommendations, and that did end up being true because she actually ended up picking 3 books because she was not able to narrow it down because she is Meg. And the first book that she picked was Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I read that one and I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. It was one of my favourite books of last year. She then picked We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faisal. I liked that one. I gave it 4 stars. I do feel like I maybe need to reread it before I read the sequel because it took me a while to get into it, and I think that sort of, and I think maybe by the time I did get into it, I'd kind of lost my way a little bit with it. Like, I'd not paid enough attention to it because I was struggling with it a little bit. So maybe on a reread I will enjoy it a little bit more. I still think it'd probably be a 4 star, but I did enjoy it. And then the last book that she picked was You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogel, which I really enjoyed. I gave that one 5 stars. It's like one of my favourite adult romances now, so we were definitely off to a good start there. And like I said, I feel like that made sense because Meg was one of the people that I spoke to most, so would make sense that she would give me quite decent recommendations there. Okay, so the next person that came up was Becca, and like her picks I actually had really like high hopes for. Like, I felt like again I felt like Becca was someone that I like spoke to fairly regularly. I felt like she probably knows my reading taste, like this is going to be fine. Sadly, her picks were not that successful last year. So I read Frostblood. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, but I know that thinking back on it, it was probably like 3.5. Like, it was enjoyable to read, but I can't tell you what the plot was now. Like, I can't remember it. I have no real inclination to pick up the rest of the series. Like, it was fine for what it was, but I just like didn't really love it too much. I've realised I just said that as if like you watched the video, and I know I'm not putting these clips in. So it's Frostblood by Ellie Blake. The other book was Furyborn by Claire Legrand, which I really wanted to love, and I tried reading it, and I tried reading it physically, I tried listening to the audiobook, and I just couldn't get into it, and I ended up actually DNFing it, which I don't do very often. And like, I obviously didn't give a star rating to this one, but if I was going to give a star rating, it would probably be a 2. Like, it wasn't bad enough to be a 1, but just for like how it held my interest and me not liking it, it would be a 2, at the most a 3. Like, it was just very much like, this is not for me. I felt like I couldn't differentiate the characters half the time, and sadly that just means that Becca's picks weren't that great for me last year. Looking at what she's picked this year, I have a lot higher hopes for this year. I feel like one of the things also is that Becca was very much sort of in a change in her own reading style last year as well. Like, she sort of went from reading more fantasies and then went into reading more like contemporaries and adult contemporaries in particular. She's very much in her romance era at the minute, and I feel like the stuff that she's reading now is stuff that I would more likely take recommendations from her. I feel like in fantasy stuff we don't line up that well, so that is probably why the recommendations weren't the best for me last year. But the things that she's recommended for me this year, I do have very high hopes for, so hopefully the numbers are going to be better. When I said I wish I'd started a spreadsheet before I did this, I have actually started one as I'm doing this. So I basically just done an average of the star ratings for the amount of books that people are giving me. So of the 3 books that Meg gave me, this average star rating was a 4.7. Of the 2 books that Becca gave me, the average star rating was a 2.75. So definitely a bit of a difference there, but I do know for a fact that it's going to get worse later on in this video, so that's fine. So the next person that came up was Lisa, and Lisa's recommendations were Nevermore by Jessica Townsend and The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Now, I was a bit worried about Lisa's picks before she actually gave them to me, before I knew what they were, because again, I feel like there's some things we have very similar tastes, but then there's some things where we are drastically different, and I was a little bit concerned about what she would give me. And even when the picks came in, I was still a little bit like, a middle grade. I don't read much middle grade, but I'm hoping I like this one. And then like horror, which I again do not generally read. I was pleasantly surprised by my ratings for these. I gave Nevermore 5 stars. I actually really enjoyed that. I've read the sequel as well, and I really enjoyed that one. So a very good recommendation there. I finally found a middle grade that I actually really loved. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, again on Goodreads it's a 4, but in hindsight it's like a 3.5. It's just, I'd more round it up to a 4 than round it down to a 3. I enjoyed it for what it was. I'm intrigued by Grady Hendrix's writing style, but I think there are other books by him that I'm gonna enjoy more. Like, I really want to read My Best Friend's Exorcism. I have promised Jem that I will read that one in like spooky season this year. It was one that she was contemplating putting on my TBR for me this year, and I said but she had other options as well, and I'm like, if I promise you I'll read it in spooky season, is that okay for you? And she said yes, so I will be reading that one. But yeah, it means that Lisa ends up with an average of 4.25, so she did very well actually, considering how cautious I was of her picks before I actually like got them from her. So next up we had Jem, who also gave me 3 picks because she couldn't narrow it down to 2. She was actually worried that somebody would have already given me one of the picks, so she didn't want me to not have an option, so she gave me 3. Nobody else had given me that pick. It was absolutely fine. That one was actually The Raven Boys by Maggie TBR, and then the other 2 that she picked were The Storm Crow by Kaylin Josephson, and then the first Firefly book. It was called Big Damn Hero. I can't remember the author of that one, which is awful, but it's a series that's based on the Firefly TV show. I ended up giving The Raven Boys 5 stars, and I gave the other 2 4 stars. I very much enjoyed all of Jem's picks. They were ones that I was like optimistic for anyway. Again, I feel like Jem is somebody that like there are definite areas that we both like avoid that the other one reads. Like the main thing that stands out is that she reads a lot of horror that I don't read at all, but there are like definitely areas where what we like very much overlaps. I feel like we both like quite like lyrical writing, so I know we both like Laini Taylor, we both like The Night Circus, we both like that sort of more beautiful writing style, and I feel like it's a sort of whimsical side of The Raven Boys as to why she was recommending that one to me, and it definitely worked. I gave it 5 stars. The Stormcrow, actually I was very surprised by because I'd owned that one for a while and I just didn't really hear anything about it at all, and I feel like some parts of it were just sort of a generic YA fantasy, but then some parts, particularly like how it dealt with mental health, were really, really well done. So I really enjoyed that. And then the Firefly novelization, like it's hard with books based on TV shows because sometimes they are just like really, really awful. It feels like they just got them out to make money and not to actually like pay attention to how good the story is. But this actually felt like a story that very much fit in with the rest of the Firefly series, and also Firefly was a series that only had 14 episodes, so there's so much more to explore there, and it felt like they did actually give someone time to do that rather than just rushing it out for the sake of making money. So I very much enjoyed that. I will be carrying on with the rest of that series. I do have the second one, I haven't read it yet, but overall Jem's books ended up with an average of a 4.33 rating. Then we're going to get to the personal ones where I didn't actually read both of the books, for different reasons for some of them. So these were Katie's picks. The first one being Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which I did enjoy. I gave it 4 stars. Again, it's probably more like 3.5 on hindsight. I feel like it was a good sci-fi story. I wasn't necessarily like as shocked by some of the twists as I maybe should have been, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I just don't think it was like going to be a new all-time favourite in a way that it is for some other people. And then the other one was The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. Now, part of the reason why I didn't read this one is that it is actually a prequel to Practical Magic, but Practical Magic was released first, and I really like to read things in release order, so it meant I would have had to have added 2 books onto my TBR, and at one point I did have them both out of the library to read, but it never came up on my TBR game, and it wasn't one that I like actively sought out. There were some where like if they didn't come up on my TBR game I would probably still try and read them anyway. This one was one where I was like, I am okay with not reading this. I do love Practical Magic as a film, but I've just never really like gravitated towards the books, and I think I'm okay with that. So I'm not going to give you like in the average for this one. I will probably just, when I'm sort of ranking people's picks later on, I will probably just, the ones that I have only read the one book from, I will just sort of say them in order of like how successful I think they were based on like that one book that they picked, but they will always be lower than the ones who gave me 2 books that I did like actively read, even though we will get to one of those 2 books I actively read later on. And yeah, one of them was not the most successful, but she is aware of this. So the next person was Ashley from Ashley's Media Addiction, and the books that she gave me were Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett, which I did read, and then EXO by, I want to say the author was called Melissa James, which is one that I did not read. So Foundryside is one that I was actually like semi-interested in before I got the recommendation, because I'd seen, I think it was Reagan from Peru's project, who had really, really loved it, and I was intrigued by it, but sadly I did not love this book. I gave it 3 stars. Like, it wasn't the worst book in the world, but I just found myself just being not interested in it as I was reading it, like, at all. I just, there was just sort of nothing like making me want to pick the book back up every time I put it down. So I got through it. It was fine, but like a 3 is sort of very, very middle of the road is the best way to explain it for like my personal taste. With EXO, it was a romance book, but it was very much like not the type of romance that I am normally interested in. And I've just checked the author, by the way, it's Melissa Jane. It was just from like the cover and the synopsis, it was straight away, I was just like, this is not something for me. I am probably going to avoid this book if I can. And it never came up on my TBR, and I'm not seeking it out to read. So yeah, sadly Ashley's picks were not the most successful, but I do very much appreciate her giving them to me just not necessarily the best ones for me, sadly. And then the next person is Danny. Now, Danny, I didn't actually realise I haven't read either of the books that she gave me, and it's not necessarily that I don't want to with these ones, because the first one was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, which I've heard good things about, and I am still tempted by that series, but it never came up on my game, and I just wasn't in the mood to sort of like go out of my way to read it, like, because basically what I've said to myself is that if there were ones that I was still desperate to read, I would like make a point of putting them on my TBR at the beginning of this year. I sort of stopped doing the extras in the middle as being the picks other people had given me, because all ones I was like, no, actually I'm quite happy with these not coming up, so I'm just gonna leave them. But if there was one that I like really wanted to read, I would have made sure that was the extra book that month whenever I had to pick an extra, and it was just like I wasn't in the mood to read it, so it's fine. Like, I will read it probably eventually, but just not right now. The other one was A Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which is another one that like I may read at some point because I have heard good things about it, but I'm not the biggest historical fiction reader, and when I do read it, it has to be that I'm really in the mood for it, so it's not something I'm going to pick up without like really being interested in it, because I think that will just like make it a bad reading experience for me. So again, thank you very much for the recommendations, Danny. I don't think they were necessarily like bad recommendations for me, but they were just ones that like I need to be in very specific moods to read them, so it didn't work for the game necessarily. Okay, so the next person that came up on the video was Liv, and hers are the ones that I did read, and yeah, they weren't the most successful. I feel like she was aware of this. Like, she gave me books that she really wanted me to read, and she kind of wanted everyone to read them, but me and Liv have very different tastes. There are some things we like very much agree on, but there are some things that we really don't. And yeah, her picks were very much ones where we just did not line up at all. So the first pick was Crave by Tracy Wolfe, which is a YA vampire story, and I know that I'm very often told that it is not like Twilight, and it isn't, but also it is. Like, in some ways it very much is. And it was just not the type of story that I'm gonna have that much interest in. It was fine for what it was. I gave it 3 stars, again, sort of very middle of the road. Like, I can understand why people would enjoy it. It's definitely better written than Twilight is. I will say that some of the pop culture references in that had already dated, like, by the time I read it, and it's very pop culture reference heavy, and that just grated on me throughout as well. But like, it was fine, just not for me. Well, the next book that she picked was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J Maas, which I don't think I need to talk about my feelings on this book anymore, but I am not a fan of Sarah J Maas's writing style, like, at all. Like, there were just various times where I was just getting really annoyed with the writing style in general. There were things that I felt like she'd done to make it more of an adult book, because she normally writes YA, although I know her books that are marketed as YA aren't actually YA, like I know with the ACOTAR series in particular, like I know they are very much not YA, even though that is what they were originally marketed as. But I feel like because this was her first like full-blown adult book, it felt like she was trying to make it more adult and make like the main character seem more edgy as well, and it just came off really cringy, and I just didn't like it. Like, there are so many things that I did not like in this book, and originally I gave it a 2-star. Should it have been a lower rating from me? Potentially. I just really didn't like it. I'm really sorry, because I know plenty of people do love it, but I really don't. And yeah, sadly Liv's picks were not the best for me. Like, again, I understand she really wanted people to read some of her favourite books. Me and Liv have different tastes when it comes to books. I think we found that out now, and I think last year's video kind of cemented that in my mind a little bit. So that was everyone that picked books for me. So I think if we were going to rank them, obviously we've got the 3 where I didn't read everything that came up. So out of those, technically I should put Danny like at the lowest, because I didn't read any of hers, but I was still like more actively intrigued to read hers. So it would probably, although I didn't read any of hers, it would probably like Danny at the top, Katie in the middle, and then Ashley at the bottom, just because of like from what I actually read of the ones that Katie and Ashley recommended. Like, I have more like concrete feelings on those, whereas Danny's I'm still like very optimistic about some of them. From the ones I actually read, like everything that was recommended, the bottom position was Liv. I'm very sorry. One up from that would be Becca. I feel like Becca's going to come back stronger this year, though. I do feel like her ratings are going to go up this year. Lisa was in 3rd place, very narrowly underneath the other 2 actually. Lisa did quite well. She got a 5-star reading there, which is a good thing. And then the top 2 are Jem and then Meg, which, to be honest, like, the only real surprise there, I think, is I would have expected Becca and Lisa to be the other way around. I just feel like in terms of like reading taste, I feel like that would have been the way I would have expected it to be. Like, I feel like out of the similarities that I know between me and Meg and me and Jem, I feel like I would have expected those to be at the top, but I would have probably expected Becca to be a bit higher up than what she was. I feel like they just weren't the best picks for me, but like I said, very, very much optimistic for how she's going to go this year. But it's interesting to look back at that and see sort of how it went, because overall I think it was a success. There were 4 5-star reads and 4 4-star reads in there, so overall it was definitely a success. And judging by what's been picked this year, I think it's only going to get better from here. So yeah, this is a bit of a rambly video, but it's just looking back at the channel in general and then looking back at how successful my little TBR experiment was last year, and fingers crossed it is even more successful this year. But that is everything. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down below, and I'll see you guys soon with a new video. Bye.